Today, we are going to discuss the success sutras of a very great scientist by name Thomas Alva Edison, who had only school education as his strength before he started scientific experiments. When he was a young boy, he chose an abandoned railway bogie for his experimentations because his house didn't have that much space to work out on his experiments. So he chose a coach factory nearby and started experimenting in that. A ticket collector found him doing something which is not acceptable because there was some fire accident happened because of some untoward experiments. So the ticket collector catch hold of the boy and slapped him on his ear. So much so that 1 year became totally deaf. Throughout his life, he carried on his deafness. Only 1 year was functioning throughout his life. People say single-eyed Jack, but Edison is single-eared scientist. To many people's surprise, he got nearly 2,000 patents under his name. How could he do that? What a secret. When some people asked him, he conceptualized his success sutras and titled it as 5 competencies. Later, after his demise, it has become very famous as 5 competencies of Edison in the scientific world. Today, I'm going to share with you all what these 5 competencies of Edison are all about. How could he manage that many experiments and that many patents, apart from invention of the electric bulb, incandescent bulb. The first principle is what he says as solution-centric thinking. While people are obsessed with their problems, whatsoever be the size, many people have the tendency of looking at the problem instead of a solution. People who are already suffering from the problem-centric thinking need to cultivate and should have a total paradigm shift from this end to other end. On the other end lies the solution. So a master, a real scientist, or a seeker on the path of self-mastery need to make this attribute called as solution-centric thinking as his natural way, and there is no other way. One should be completely obsessed, occupied with solution-centric models and managements. That gives a person, a novice who was on the path of experimentation, an investigative type of consciousness. When you are chasing for a solution, naturally your traits and temperaments will be in alignment with investigation. Your consciousness acquires the quality of investigation, parishodhana, shodhana, a research orientation. So the solution-centric model is the second skin of any truth seeker or a scientist or a spiritual sadhak. Investigative type of consciousness has to be cultivated by way of acquiring the solution-centric model. The second attribute Edison says is one should have a thinking called as kaleidoscopic thinking. What is that? You know, kaleidoscope, when you are a child, You must have definitely played with this kaleidoscope, a cylindrical tube with splinters of something which is shining, some 20, 30, 50 pieces of small shining material, maybe paper balls, tiny paper balls and beads and dust of shining things. And you shake this box and look on the other end with a transparent film. And every time you look into this tunneled box, the picture on the other side of the screen will be totally different. Similarly, all the bits and pieces of information that you are holding in the path of investigating things need to be shuffled, reshuffled many times, many times, so that you see things differently every time. The same bits and pieces of information, when you see from a different perspective, from a different angle, from a different dimension, the way it gives the level of understanding, the way it gives the truth lurking behind will be totally different. The same mind containing same pieces of information, but when you shift the dimension of observing things, when you shift the angle of observing things, truth emerges. Truth lies in the space between these bits and pieces of information. And when you want to see the space, these things should be shuffled and reshuffled by way of looking the same from a different angle and dimension. This the modern neurologists call as fluid intelligence. Fluid intelligence means many people or most of the people have a rigid type of intelligence. Their intelligence is totally patternized. Their intelligence is totally typical. Their intelligence is programmed. Their intelligence is tunnelized. It goes only in known traits and tracks. It doesn't take a different track. So if you want to have a different track of thinking, you must have something called as fluid intelligence, which Edison calls it as kaleidoscopic thinking. This kaleidoscopic thinking is very important. The third attribute Edison says is to have a full spectrum thinking. What is meant by full spectrum thinking? Full spectrum thinking is, so you know what is spectrum. For example, health is defined as spectrum. On one end it is called as disease, the other end it is called as health. And the midpoint is the borderline, on the left side of which you are called as ill, on the right hand of which you are called as well. So this is called a full spectrum. And our thinking should have full spectrum. That means if you have an idea of certain thing or a person or an investigative methodology about anything, you should have full spectrum. You should observe it from a very trivial side and very greater side. So the trivial is not actually trivial. For example, a scientist's mind will be like this. Isaac Newton, most of the scientists and professors are absent-minded. No, because they're not actually absent-minded, they're mindful, deeply mindful of something else. The reason which makes them mindless of very small things which small kids can understand. Isaac Newton was experimenting in his lab with a closed door, bolted inside. And a cat came into the lab and had a litter of kitten, 6 babies. So every time the mother wants to bring the food, he has to enter the lab and the door was closed. So he just scratched from the other side. And that was very much disturbing to Isaac Newton. So what he did, he made 6 small holes in the lower part of the door and 1 big hole for the mother, so that the kitten can go easily to and fro of these holes, and the mother also can enter in and go out through the big hole. A child came and told Einstein one day, why you made 6 small holes and 1 big hole? If you make 1 big hole, all the kittens, small kitten and big, the mother also can go in 1 hole. Why do you make 7 holes? So Isaac Newton scratched his head. Yes, see, a scientist like Isaac Newton, who discovered the force of gravity, gravitational force, was so, his mindfulness can be observed by way of making 6 small holes and 1 big hole. So this is called a full spectrum thinking. That means even trivial things of your life, not only, for example, if you're obsessed with one very investigative experiment, you need not be obsessed with that. you must be mindful of several things like your personal life, your interests, hobbies, your leisurely time activities, your kids, your colleagues and their lives, movies, and just a stroll, leisurely stroll, idle stroll on the streets. Everything can help you. That's the reason why Edison used to practice something called as relaxation and experimentation. And this should be altered frequently. Once you are totally obsessed with one type of activity, you must take relaxation by way of reading Shakespeare poetry or taking a leisurely stroll on the isolated road, something like that. So relaxation and work and play should be altered. This is what is called as full spectrum thinking. So if you're totally obsessed with one thing, you will be mentally exhausted and you will not be refreshed and you can never be rejuvenated. So small things like having an evening stroll, morning stroll, greeting some people, keeping an eye on what is happening in the family, their needs and all, everything helps you in understanding what you are and makes you even more investigative. So the playful nature of your own investigative awareness will be exemplified with the help of full spectrum thinking. The fourth one is mastermind collaboration. Mastermind collaboration means, Robin Sharma says, when your dreams are very big, your team must be very big. So as per the size of the dream, so much should be the size of the team. Not exactly size, the quality of your team. For example, Edison was in one point of time working on 40 different types of inventions simultaneously. How is it possible to focus his mind on 40 different things which are not related to each other? And for each investigative experimentation model, he used to have certain teams, a head team, assistants and all. So the team building, team leading, all these things he mastered by way of collaborating the best of the minds for each investigative method or each experimentation. And he used to connect all the 40 inventions and he used to patronize all the 40 inventions which are simultaneously going through in his head. Leo Tolstoy said, learning can never exhaust your mind. As long as you learn, it can never exhaust your mind. If you don't want to learn, it will exhaust you. If you want to learn continuously, it will never exhaust you. Similarly, Edison simultaneously picked up 40 different inventions and tried to build the connections which are obviously not possible, apparently not possible, but still he made it possible by way of patronizing or commonalizing the principles which are in different degrees can be attributed one to another. So this type of subliminal patronization he was able to do with the help of this principle called as mastermind collaboration. He used to have masterminds in every invention and he used to collaborate with all these different types of people simultaneously and could as well patronize and streamline everything in his mind. That is what is called as mastermind collaboration. And the last but cannot be least is the super value thinking. For everything there is a value. For every person there is a value. Instead of going for name, fame, and how you want to appear, how every person in the world wants to appear very great in front of others. So when you want to shed away, come out of this idea and thought of appearing as great in front of others and appearing as great in front of one's eyes, that is what is called as giving value to yourself. Einstein, throughout his life, after studying so many successful people across the world, like Leo Tolstoy, Mahatma Gandhi, Rabindranath Tagore, Charlie Chaplin, Winston Churchill, Franklin Roosevelt, and so many other people in the world, he drew a conclusion that the success of any great man depends upon two things. One is his passionate curiosity and the value he gives to his work. Emphasis on the value. The value which you give for yourself is your strength. The value which you give for yourself is your treasure. There is no other thing. So increase the value of yourself, value of your own knowledge. And Edison adds a little more and calls it as super value thinking. So what is most valuable in terms of society? What is most valued in terms of the commonalist ideologies? What is most valuable in terms of his own thinking is emphasized, and that is grabbed hold of, and all the experimentations and investigations are moved in this direction. So when you give more value to your own knowledge, thinking abilities, and attributes, qualities that you keep on cultivating for yourself for higher good and for higher purpose and for higher ideal, this together is called as super value thinking. And these 5 attributes or modes of thinking are popularly known as 5 competencies of Edison. And to summarize, the first one is the solution-centric thinking. Second is the kaleidoscopic thinking. The third, the full spectrum thinking. The fourth, mastermind collaboration. The fifth is super value thinking. So put together makes one a great scientist and sadhak. Thank you very much.